Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Daily App 19 or maybe 20. And today I want to talk about something that I think it's especially relevant for the world nowadays. And the statement is basically that judgment, as in judging other people, is a good thing. So, maybe a little bit controversial, right? Like, ever since I was young, at least, they were teaching me at school, like, oh, you shouldn't judge other people. And of course, that makes sense because, say, for example, something really trivial like your football team. And by the way, when I mean football, I mean what Americans call soccer. Like, if you're from one team and the other person is from the other team, you shouldn't say, like, oh, he's a bad person or like he's dumb or anything like that because honestly, a football team is something really trivial. In my case, my family was from one team, so I was supposed to be for that one team. By the way, I'm not a football guy, so I don't really care. And also you can take that statement and put it into something less trivial. For example, sexuality, right? There used to be, I feel like there's not honestly a lot of that nowadays, but there used to be a lot of people that would judge people based on their sexuality. For example, them being gay or lesbian. I know because I've talked with my mom, right? And how, what people said back in those days. She's around 60 years old. So, yeah, you get the idea, like the 80s, the 90s. So, yeah, in that sense, you shouldn't judge people based on that because those are things that do not tell you about the character of the person. Like someone being gay literally doesn't like tell you anything besides the fact that they like guys, or girls in case of lesbians. But what I'm saying is that I was having this discussion with a friend of mine. We were gossiping basically, and he told me that he was like, no, like you shouldn't like judge people based on this. And I don't know. I think I was commenting on something that was like, I don't know, like something trivial, but I didn't like it. And he said that, he was like, oh, you shouldn't judge other people. And I was like, wait, hold on. Like, we should judge other people. And what I mean by this, it's not a black and white thing. Of course, you cannot judge people based on everything they do, right? But you should judge them on some things they do, and you can make your own judgment without like interfering into the other people's lives. And I told him, like, for example, you've been living, my friend, I told him, hey, you've been living with me for the last 5 days. And of course, you've seen me smoke. And you realize that I do smoke a lot. Because, yeah, I do. Sadly, it's not something that I like, but I do smoke a lot. And I was telling him, like, you can make the judgment that smoking is something that's bad for me. And, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong from a health perspective. But also, I don't know, maybe from a psychological one, right? Because it's a vice and you don't really need it to cope with whatever stress I have in my life. Or boredom sometimes, right? Because I smoke weed mostly. And he was like, maybe you got a point. And after that, like, we talk about something else, and then the conversation eventually changed into another topic. But what I want to like say is that we were taught for so long that we shouldn't judge people based on all these things that we forgot that there are some things that you should judge people based on, right? So, for example, just saying, like, you can get more nuance with this. Like, say that the financials of someone, right? That they are not well off, that they're maybe struggling, and then you see that they buy a car, like a really expensive one. Is that something judge worthy? Once again, it doesn't tell you if that person is like a bad or a good person. It's not that deep, honestly. But you can make the judgment that that was not a financial sounding decision, right? Maybe they lack impulse control, and maybe it's a thing of vanity. If they had a new car and it was perfect, sorry, if they had an old car and it was perfectly working perfectly, and now they buy a new one just because it's a newer model. Like, we as people do this all the time. So I know that it feels weird to say it out loud, but we do it like all the time. If you see someone obese, walking on the street, you might make the judgment that they don't take good care of their health. And honestly, not always. Of course, there's always like this edge case, which is like, oh, he just went through like something bad, and I don't know, like something happening with the hormones. But for 99% of the cases, the judgment will be somewhat correct, right? Now, of course, there are unfair judgments. Like, I'm not saying that there are not. And I'm not saying that sometimes you can be mistaken. Like, once again, I'm not saying that my judgment or anyone's judgment is the absolute truth. But what I'm saying is it's more like an observation on the nature of humans. Because once again, we do judge a lot. And based on a lot of things. So instead of creating this lie of like, oh no, you shouldn't judge people, why don't we actually get conscious about it? If you're walking in the middle of the night, in a shady part of town, and then you see a guy with like a hoodie, not looking very friendly, and is walking towards you, you might cross the sidewalk, right, to the other part of the street. That's judgment, like that. There is no way that you can say that that's not judgment. And true, some people might say, oh yeah, it's because you do it on a self preservation way, right? It's like, oh well, I might misjudge, but if I don't, then I might get robbed, I might get mugged. So once again, like, there's nuance to this. You shouldn't, I don't know, judge people based on what food they like or what music they hear. Even though it's hard, I myself, I'm I'm guilty of sometimes judging people based on the music they hear. But that's the thing, it's like we do that all the time, and with a lot of things. And of course, we should be conscious enough to know what things are actually important and what things are not. Because, that's also, I'll probably make another video about this, but that's one thing that I feel like most people in society doesn't get. We, in general, I'm talking like on a universal or Western point of view, we are aiming to have societies that are very like judgmental free, right? Because we have very diverse societies. You have people that like this, people that like that, people that agree with this, people that don't agree with that. So the only way that we can kind of like hold the social fabric of things is to accept all of this, right? And to accept them means, of course, not casting them away or like making, like this barrier between them and us, right? That's the rhetoric that we are trying to get away from. Which, once again, makes sense on a social level, right? On like a worldview, sorry, not a worldview, but like a, like for social cohesion, when you talk about like societies as like, the big thing, the society. But that does not mean that we as individuals cannot make our own judgments and live our lives different from how society aims to be, right? So for example, the best example of this is like religious people. Religious people, I mean, I'm talking about not just like your average Christian, I'm talking about like more in-depth people that live religion closer. They only marry people from their own religion, right? Like, think of the Mormons. And they might make friends of other people, but they are picky with their best friends, like they try to be from within the same group. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I think that that's part of your personal freedoms, right? Like, you live your life how you want to, and you shouldn't be forced to like, how to say it, like run away from your judgment of other people, because those judgments, sometimes you're not able to phrase them correctly, but you have your gut instinct, right? You're just like, something's wrong or something doesn't click right with me. Now, of course, this can be mistaken. Once again, like, I'm not saying that these are like perfect rules to live by, but once again, I'm just observing the actual nature of humans. We humans judge things all the time. And when the society tells us to, don't judge other people, they mean like, try to like see the other way, try to find the explanation, and also don't make like trivial judgment, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, we have to be conscious that we're always making judgments of other people, and that's not inherently bad. What we do with that judgment or how we react to that judgment is what can be bad, right? So for example, if you say like, oh, this person is from my group, whatever that may be, religion, ethnicity, nationality, political side, and if you say like, oh, this person is not from this group, whatever, they might think this, they might think that, and then, whatever, like, you go talk with that person and you realize that you were right about some things, wrong about some things. The moment that you actually take that judgment and you're like, ooh, he's an outsider, we should go and beat him, or not socialize with him or her, that's when the bad things happen. But once again, like thinking, for example, meeting someone and knowing that they are from the other political side or whatever, and thinking that they are wrong, or like thinking that that's not good for them, is something pretty valid. And yeah, I don't know, I wanted to put some light into it and talk about it for a little bit. So anyway, this has been Daily Up. I'll see you tomorrow.